Welcome to Podcast 83, a regular look at the news, stories, and trends related to Michigan's 83 counties from the Michigan Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Podcast 83, the podcast put on by the Michigan Association of Counties. My name is Steve Currie, the Executive Director of MAC. Today I'm joined by Deena, Bosworth, Jimmy Johnson, Samantha Gibson, all from the MAC staff. This is a post 4th of July holiday recording, so I hope everyone had a good holiday. Team, did we all have a good holiday?
We had a great holiday.
Good. Summer's finally underway. It was hot that week in Michigan. It's been a little bit of a rough spring. Still some rain out there, which isn't bad. It's keeping things green. So let's get into it because I think we have some updates both on the state and federal level we want to talk about. So Sam, why don't you kick us off a little bit? Talk about what happened in Lansing last week. We are up against a July 1st deadline, which is in statute a deadline to get school aid budget done, the rest of the regular budget done. In statute, it requires a July 1st date. Of course, there's no penalty should they not get it done. Did we get it done?
We did not.
Oh.
The House and Senate are at an impasse, as they have been for the last 7 months now. To your point, Steve, typically the school aid budget's done, the rest of the budget's done by July 1st. Everyone goes home and does their in-district work over the summer. They come back in the fall and do whatever policy they're going to do at that time and, maybe a supplemental. But now the impasse is really around, outside of the political disagreements around what they should fund, there's no roads plan that anyone can agree on. The governor has made it clear she wants to see a road plan. Speaker Hall has put forth a plan. Senate Democrats have yet to put anything forth. So we will see if and when they do that. But I think until that point, there's not going to be much to talk about because House Republicans are steadfast. And if you want to do K-12, we're going to do roads with it. And Senate leadership is adamant that everything gets done as a package deal together. So
a lot of discussions, a lot of meetings last week, but no movement on the needle, unfortunately. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? I think they'll spend the summer hopefully negotiating a budget to some extent. At the very least, they're going to have to do school aid. Hopefully a road budget comes with that. But October 1st is the beginning of the next fiscal year. So really they have until then to pass something for the fiscal year 26 budget. And if not, then we embark into government shutdown territory. I don't know how likely or unlikely that is. I would hope that by that time they can have something put forth that can get to the governor's desk.
Yeah, so we got no state budget right now. Not critical. Would be nice to have it done, but not critical till an October 1st date. We've heard rumors of another CREC maybe in August, September. One of the variables on the table, I think, which should help this process along because it does provide some clarity in what, at least the potential impact of the state budget is what was passed, the reconciliation bill that was passed last week at the federal level, Big Beautiful Bill Act, reconciliation bill, whatever you want to call it. Because now with that passed, that does at least take some of the variables that they were maybe looking at when they're trying to pass the state budget off the table to a certain extent. There's still going to be some decisions the state has to make. But so let's talk a little bit about that bill and how it could potentially impact the state's budget. One of the first items I think us and NACO were watching were tax exempt municipal bonds. Deena, you want to tell us a little bit about first what those are used for, what happened?
We've been watching this, tax exempt municipal bond debate for years. And each year, that we've been successful in retaining the tax exempt status for any municipal bonds. So these are bonds that you go out and use for infrastructure projects. And it saves counties and local units of government, millions of dollars every year because they don't have to pay taxes on those bonds. But it's always been threatened to be taken away because it means a significant amount of money for the federal government. So if we were paying those taxes, it would be more revenue for, the US government. But fortunately, I mean, they did not take away that tax exempt status for those muni bonds, and they figured out a way to do it without that additional revenue. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out as we're embarking on this discussion or this analysis of, if you want to call it that, of this, the big beautiful bill act, that this is not comprehensive. We're primarily focusing on what decisions were made that could potentially affect the state, which could trickle down to counties. Tax exempt muni bonds are one of those. There are significant changes in SNAP and Medicaid. Jimmy, why don't you touch on some of those and how those could trickle down into the state budget, thus potentially counties' budgets through the general fund appropriation process?
Yeah, and thanks, Steve. To start off with, Medicaid has been a really, really big topic over, I would say, over the last decade. A lot of people are trying to find ways that they can cut money. When this new administration came in, they stated that they wanted to find waste, fraud, and abuse. And by being able to point those out, they did put in some different requirements going into Medicaid and SNAP. One is going to be work requirements, where it's currently 18 years old to 54-year-olds. They are now moving that to 19-year-olds to 64-year-olds. And what would be required to maintain your Medicaid status and to maintain your SNAP benefits is that you would have to monthly prove that you have done 80 hours of either work or volunteer work, and then that would have to be verified for you to continue receiving those benefits. In the past, as this bill has been being brought up, in particular with Medicaid, there has been some reports that come out that are saying that we could see coverage losses here in the state between 200 and 700,000 residents. As of right now, I haven't seen anything specific. These are just based on what's been drawn in the past. And additionally, since there is going to be these cuts in Medicaid based on, in certain parts, redeterminations, Michigan could see anywhere from a $2 to $4 billion deduction in their Medicaid funds that are coming in. So this is going to be something really big, especially when we are looking at our rural hospitals. A lot of these rural hospitals primarily rely on their Medicaid funding. Part of this bill that has come out is that there is $50 billion that is going to be available for these rural hospitals. So that would be for recruiting and retention, operating costs. Now, it is only $50 billion and it's going nationwide. However, the state will have to apply for those monies if they want to supplement their rural counties. So that's something that we're starting to dig into right now. Hey, what exactly are the metrics that we need to get to be able to get that money into the door into our rural hospitals? Now, dealing with SNAP, this is a little bit trickier as well. Is that so? We have 1.5 million residents in Michigan that use SNAP benefits. With these new cuts right now that are in this big beautiful bill, we could see 285 to 300 billion dollars over 10 years that are going to be cut. As well, you are going to be putting in the work requirements. So there's going to be additional administrative burden that's going to be taking place. And with that administrative burden, we could see on the state side up to $890 million of additional costs that the state's going to have to be picking up the dime for. So these are some things that, we're going to be watching and waiting. Part of the state budget is going to be supplementing into the health, into the SNAP. So we're going to be watching just to see exactly what that looks like, because let's say that the House and the Senate came forward with a budget based on prior funding mechanisms, they would have to completely redraw this. So at least now we have a good idea of, this is where the starting point is going to be. Now we know this is where the federal dollars are coming. This is how much. Now that's going to give the state an area to where they can start building the house off that foundation.
Yeah, they've got to figure out where they want to fill in and if they want to fill in some of these areas.
Exactly. A lot of tough decisions are going to have to be made here, going forward.
Yeah, they're either go back to the drawing board or something. But it does provide some clarity, at least, of what they have to deal with now, which I think is helpful in the overall budget process when we start looking at getting a budget done by October 1st.
I just want to make one clarification when we were talking about work requirements. There will be work requirements, on SNAP and Medicaid recipients, but I think they do exempt out those that really aren't able-bodied or those that have young children. So hopefully, I think all those verifications will still have to happen, which is going to be a bunch of hoops to jump through. But those, I think, the completely disabled are not going to necessarily have to have the work requirements.
Yeah, that's where I think some administrative burden when
Yeah.
Jim was talking about that at the state level will increase. And by how much, or who knows yet, and if they determine how much coverage they want to provide too, where does that come in? But you can see where trying to get a budget done for this federal reconciliation bill was passed. This would be tough to do, in my opinion. I don't know how you could have passed the budget prior to that, and then or you go back and do a supplemental, and we still don't have a supplemental done from last year's budget. So there's a lot of moving parts out there with the state legislature, and hopefully now that there's some determination on at least the target for where these changes from the federal level are being made, they can start working around that.
I think there's a little bit we still have to be concerned about though, because a lot of these provisions have a delayed implementation. So delayed implementation for some of these work requirements, delayed implementation for, some of this extra, verification of eligibility. But they haven't passed, the federal government hasn't passed their fiscal year 26 budget yet. This is just that big, beautiful act bill that they got done. And I'm wondering if there's enough certainty for fiscal year 26 that they won't throw some of this in there, or they will. So there still may be a little bit of uncertainty. I'm not sure.
And who knows how much the state, because of the delayed implementation, will want, if they are looking to maintain coverage or do a certain target for a coverage level or maintain some of the current levels that they're at, how much they would do that in this fiscal year for future fiscal years, right? So
Bank the money.
yeah,
Right.
save some money. So it's interesting. A couple other areas on the reconciliation bill, big beautiful bill act. Deena, renewable energy, hot topic in Michigan, something we've worked on for a lot. Local control is also important. There was a provision in the act that talks about renewable energy and revenue sharing.
I was surprised at this. So what this provision is that if there's a renewable energy project going on federal land, okay, not state land, but on federal land, then 25% of that revenue goes to the county. So if a developer goes and they're going to build on federal land, I think there's, a huge financial incentive for counties to have that renewable energy project in their county on federal land. So that's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, definitely interesting that they have that in there. And was it an up to number or was it an automatic?
It's a 25%
Okay.
of the revenue.
Okay, good. And then
All right, now you're making me second guess, but yeah, that's what I understand.
I wasn't doing it to second guess you. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head if it was 25% or and then finally moving on to one last issue that but that was what we wanted to talk about. It was AI. AI is a big topic, obviously. Generative AI. What was the provision put in there about generative AI and AI, Deena, that had to do with local control?
Yeah, so the House wanted to prevent local units of government from having any regulations around AI, any local real control. And the Senate said, hold on, stop, wait a minute. We need locals to have the ability to have their own regulations if they so choose that are tailored to their communities. So luckily the House or the Senate was successful in ensuring that we still had local control where the House had tried to preempt that local control on that issue.
Yeah, that's good that they recognize the importance of local control in that instance. And at least put a moratorium on it for a certain amount of time that prevents that. So that's kind of all on the federal level, state level. Anything I missed that you guys wanted to touch on? Covered a lot today. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes, so give us a call. We'll keep you updated as much as possible. It's just, things are almost at a standstill right now. Lots of policy work behind the scenes, but not a lot of movement.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys. We'll be, a few of us will be going to the NACO annual conference here this coming weekend. We have a second VP candidate, Alicia Bell, running for second VP. It's been a long time since we've had that. We'll see how that vote turns out and probably get some more clarity even on this reconciliation bill at that time. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Podcast 83.